This episode of Dispatches from Planet Albany is brought to you with support by New York State United Teachers, which represents more than 600,000 educators and school-related professionals in New York. Dispatches is also supported by the public affairs firm O'Donnell & Associates. For more information, check out o'donnellsolutions.com.
Is there any, requirement of how it's affixed to the device? Like, can I duct tape or zip tie it to the front or the back?
Well, if your business is willing to sell that product like that, Mr. Gandolfo, I think it would be okay.
We try to keep costs down.
I've also declared war on potholes, so here's the first shot across the bow.
Well, as you know, with Planet Albany, there's always something that makes the planet turn.
And it's this amazing view of D.C., and Eddie Vedder comes out. And he goes, "You have a cigarette?" And I've never smoked in my life, but if I had, I wish that was the moment.
And this strategy takes us from potholes to knotholes.
I would like to say it was a pleasure, Mr. Kim. But I'm on the road.
I'm David Lombardo, and this is Dispatches from Planet Albany, a podcast about power and politics in New York State government. On this episode, we're checking in with Senate Finance Committee Chair Liz Krueger, a Manhattan Democrat who's on the mend after a stroke this spring, which took her away from the Capitol during the legislative session, including the budget process. We'll talk about the experience with the stroke, her expectations for 2027, including whether she wants to lead the Finance Committee again, and get her thoughts on a controversial marijuana bill that moved at the very end of the legislative session. And a couple of housekeeping notes. If you enjoy the podcast, please leave us a rating or review wherever you download the show. We also want to hear from you, especially if you have questions or topics you think we should cover in the future. Shoot us an email at capital.pressroom@wcny.org. Enjoy the show. Well, Senator, I want to just jump right in, and I'm curious, what can you tell us about the circumstances surrounding your stroke in April and the subsequent road to recovery?
So I didn't know a lot about strokes until I woke up one morning and I was not able to verbalize correctly. And I thought I was saying to my husband, I think I have to go to the doctor. But apparently gobbledygook was coming out of my mouth already. So he simply dialed 911 and had an ambulance come, which was exactly the right answer, because when you are having a stroke, and that's what he suspected, the most critical issue is getting to an appropriate emergency room as fast as possible. So in my case, I think it took about 3 minutes for the ambulance to get here and another 3 minutes to get to my closest hospital, which happens to be Lenox Hill Northwell. And very happily, they are excellent at strokes and neurological issues. They took a look and said, oh yes, definitely stroke going on. By then, I was almost completely oblivious to anything happening to me. They did give me that drug they can give you in your first couple of hours of a stroke to decrease the damage done through blood clots. And it was a blood clot-driven stroke situation. From there, I went into an intensive care unit for about 5 days where I was completely oblivious to anything happened to me. I had no cognitive or verbal or physical ability to do anything, which was scary as hell for my family, but I didn't even know what was going on. And then apparently on around the end of the day 6, I woke up and started to talk complete sentences, seemed to understand everything that was happening. They all rushed in to go, really? This doesn't happen so quickly. You know, you don't get better like this. I demanded to get up out of the bed. They said, no, we don't think you can walk. Apparently what I said was, I'm an anarchist. You can't keep me here. And then they let me out of the bed. And I stood up and walked fine. And literally you had neurologists coming up from the emergency room going, this doesn't happen. And then I learned more and more about stroke. I was actually let out of the hospital 2 days later, allowed to come home. They said, you don't need rehabilitation and follow-up because you don't have anything wrong now, literally. Like, you're functioning quite well. You'll be really tired, probably for up to 6 months. We don't want you to leave like a 5-block radius of this hospital for 3 months, because people who have strokes, and this is also very important, I think, for public knowledge, if you have a stroke, you're most likely to have another one within 3 months. So they want to take extra careful watching for the first 3 months. And so that's what I did. But they also said, we want you to do as much exercise as possible. So people who know me know that I have never been a gym rat. I now work out twice a week with a trainer. I swim twice a week. And I've discovered the miracle of acupuncture, which many of the neurologists said really helps people post-stroke, because it helps your synapses and your nerves and the other systems in your body that we don't even totally understand reboot themselves. So my husband refers to me as Liz 2.0. And I got to tell you, I really dodged a major bullet. Endless people sent prayers and best wishes. I've always believed I take everyone's prayers. And so thank everyone for offering them. And thank you to the medical community, because this could have gone completely the opposite way. And for many people, unfortunately, it does.
Well, in addition to your newfound appreciation for physical activities, is this having any other impact on what you prioritize or value in your day-to-day life?
I think it reinforced to me how important public service is to me. I mean, not only have I always believed in it, and I've spent pretty much my whole life working in some capacity in public service, it feeds you and your brain as much as I hope I feed into it with good efforts. So it re-energized me. So oddly, I guess one of the other things that they tell you is that people who go through strokes can often suffer from depression. And that is actually a pattern. And that is not the case with me. I actually feel disturbingly euphoric each morning when I wake up. I say disturbingly because I know the world is in crisis. I know our world at this moment in history is filled with issues perhaps beyond our capacity to even understand, better yet fix. And yet I still wake up every morning saying, you're here, you better do something about it. So I think I'm a little off the scale of normal behavior when it comes to post-stroke recovery, because it has made me more energized and committed to the things that I believe in.
Well, as you were on your road to recovery, you were able to participate in the legislative process because of the remote opportunities that exist really since the pandemic. And I'm curious, based on your experience, do you feel like we need to do additional work to make remote work possible for state lawmakers? I mean, should there be more opportunities for them to engage remotely the way some people in civilian life can work from home a couple days a week? Or conversely, from your experience as someone who wants to be engaged, did you see ways in which someone might take advantage of the remote work and essentially be absent-mindedly engaging? What did you take away from that remote experience?
So for me, I found it incredibly valuable. Obviously, I wasn't able to return to Albany under doctor's orders, but because I could participate in Zoom discussions with my colleagues and then even vote remotely and watch the debate on the floor, I couldn't actually debate per se from my home office, but I could text the people debating during the debates my opinion, which I did. And nobody shut me down. I mean, they obviously didn't have to turn on their phone or listen to me, but it was interesting how people were responsive. So I'm a catch-22. I think there are risks when everything's remote. I mean, first off, human contact is critical. Human relationships, when you're working on legislative issues, are critical, because none of us ever do it alone. It's always, can you get the majority of your colleagues to agree with you on something? And that requires social interaction and trust and relationship building. So I don't think I would ever want a storyline where legislators never actually met in person. They never actually talked to each other. They never had committee meetings. They never had debates on the floor. I do think things like this, you and I doing this on Zoom, have absolutely expanded opportunities, not just for more work to get done, but also for the public to be brought in more easily. 20 million New Yorkers are not going to show up in the Capitol and watch what happens in the committee rooms or watch what happens on the floor of the Assembly or the Senate, but they can turn on their computers, assuming they have, computer access, and watch the committee meetings, watch the floor action, watch various things that are going on, and even have meetings with their own legislators without having to travel sometimes 5-6 hours to Albany to see them. I think that's all been a plus. So I'm totally open to expanding ways that there can be more communication and more access. And frankly, we quote unquote say we're a part-time legislature. Once you're elected, if you don't want to do anything, you actually can get away with it, by the way, under the law, right? You can get elected, not open an office, not hire staff, and not show up and vote. And the question is, do they vote you in again in 2 years or they vote you out? But there's no legal obligation pretty much to do anything once you're elected. And so seems to me the assignment is actually for us as voters to make sure we elect people who share our values and our ideals and who will commit to going to work every day. And I think there are ways, frankly, that we could become more full-time, especially with the use of technology, versus expecting people to have session 12 months a year, which has its own limitations and costs. So I think there are ways to do this, and I would be completely open to all of those.
Thinking about the 2027 session, what sort of work-life balance are you looking to strike? And do you imagine you'll try to utilize the remote options to some degree? Or do you feel like you'll be at a position where you're going to be in these halls making yourself heard?
I fully expect to be coming back to Albany. I am now released from those rules about how close I need to be, to the hospital I was cared for at, or my doctors. I'm feeling very good, very strong, and I don't see any reason that I won't continue to be going to Albany in a regular schedule. I didn't know there was remote voting ever allowed. That was a surprise to me after 25 years, that if you had a medical reason, you actually could be excused.
Yeah, as long as you're not running for mayor.
Well, fair enough. Or something else. And so it was certainly a good tool to know about. And there were, I think, at least one other colleague in the Senate who was also using that for an extended time. I am certainly hoping not to need to use that health reason to be excused. And no, I'm not running for anything but my own seat in November. So no, I'm planning, I have to build in more gym time. I have to figure out how to keep the exercise up when I'm not here in New York City.
Thinking more about the session as well, assuming there's a change in the Senate rules next year, would you like to continue serving as Senate Finance Chair?
So I'm having discussions with my leader, who I do expect will continue to be the leader.
Who also needs changes to the rules, yes.
Who also needs changes in the rules. And as you know, the structure is you pick your leader and they decide who chairs. I have discussed with my leader the concept of redefining roles in some way. The rules, for example, in the Senate now allow for co-chairs of the Finance Committee, not of other committees, but of the Finance Committee, under the recognition that it is a disproportionately large amount of work. And we are exploring that. She may decide that it's time for someone else. And I have told her that is totally fine with me. I don't really stand on formality. Like, I know if I end up not being chair of finance, it's not going to actually change what I do every day. I mean, it will decrease the responsibilities in certain areas, but it will give me more opportunity to work on big policy legislation, which is what I love. Like, I'm not interested in small bills. I'm interested in the tough ones that sometimes take years to get right and get done. I believe that that is one of the areas that I don't know if I excel at, but it's often like nobody else wants to try this because they don't think it's possible. Liz will try. I'm sort of known for that. So if I was not finance chair and perhaps chair of a different committee with less daily responsibilities, I might have more time to work on big policy legislation, which is also very exciting to me. And I've also learned after 25 years in the Senate, it doesn't necessarily matter what your committee title is, or even if you're majority or minority, can you build relationships to support what you believe in? Can you figure out the complex systems of a legislative body to get things that you want done? So I don't think my skill set leaves if I change my job description at all.
Well, one of the big bills that you've successfully shepherded across the finish line was the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act back in 2021. And fast forward to the end of this session, one of the big marijuana bills that moved essentially only with Democratic support was the bill imposing the cannabis wage board, although you and your assembly counterpart who sponsored the MRTA 5 years ago, Crystal Peoples-Stokes, voted no on that bill. What was it about that measure that was problematic for you?
Well, I feel like it came out of nowhere at the last second.
It did.
Oh, there you go. It appears that it was an attempt at a solution to a piece of litigation that's moving through the courts where the feds, because they keep trying to supersede us every day in every way, are trying to say that the labor type agreements that we built into MRTA.
Yeah, those labor peace agreements.
Thank you very much. I was looking for the word peace. That the labor peace agreements in any of our laws are challengeable under federal laws, and that they might try to shoot them all down. And I think somebody said, well, let's just do away with that issue in cannabis and maybe the problem will go away. I don't think that bigger problem is going away. I think New York will have to confront under the Trump administration the fact that, like so many other issues, he's hostile to our models of government and will try to overturn them as frequently as possible. That said, a solution that has not been thought out, has not been brought to all the stakeholders to discuss and carefully designed can result in this case, with a struggling new industry of small independent stores and manufacturers and processors and growers can end up actually making it impossible for it to continue. So I fear that this model that we then passed into law, although we're still waiting for regulations, could result in the destruction of an industry we have worked so hard to develop, which is still fledgling. There's basically no other businesses in the state of New York but one that face a wage board determining what the wages and benefits will be for workers. I think we're creating a problem that we do not have the solution to with that piece of legislation.
Well, finally, before I let you go, what are your expectations for the direction of the majority conference next year? Because while you clearly have stability at the top of the Senate Democratic Conference with Leader Stuart Cousins expected to run the chamber for another 2 years at least, there is turnover of some consequence, whether it's the departure of the deputy leader or the addition of some new Democratic socialists. Some people are anticipating a struggle for the legislature and what they end up prioritizing. I'm a little more skeptical of that and kind of have more faith in the institution to kind of just steady as she goes. But again, falling on your history, you've been here for 24, 25 years now.
Yeah.
What are you anticipating in terms of the experience in the Senate next year?
So again, I don't ever speak for the legislature. I only try to talk about the Senate because the Assembly is a very different house,
sure,
very different situation. So for the Senate, yes, I have been here 25 years. I've lived through coups, counter coups, PTSD periods, corruption, and then we came out the other end with Andrea Stewart Cousins as our leader, and we took a supermajority in 2018 election thanks to Donald Trump. Frankly, everybody came out to vote against him. And I suspect we will have a larger majority when I go back in January, also thanks to Donald Trump. Isn't that an odd sentence to offer you? Yes, people left. Some really good people decided to leave. I will highlight Mike Gineris and Brian Kavanaugh, who were both extraordinary legislators. And I was very sorry that they both decided not to run again, but that was their right because we're not chattel. And so we will have some new senators replacing people who left, and we will have new senators because I think we will gain Democrats, and some will be farther to the left, and some won't. And what I can say about the Senate Democrats since Andrea's taken over is we work it out. We get along with each other. We fight our fights inside the conference room. We negotiate to come to a place where the majority of us feel comfortable with a position, and then we work to get it done. And I do not expect there to be any new problems in 27, just some new voices and some loss of old voices.
Well, do you think that ability for the conference to essentially maintain a steady direction, to not fall into chaos, is just a product of the gravitas and style of the leader, or is it a reflection of the structures and framework that she has put in place, which might theoretically outlast her in the future when she is no longer leader?
Excellent. I think it's both. I'm so proud of my conference, and I've lived through some of the worst years, I think, in the history of the New York State Senate.
Some of the most fun to cover, though.
Maybe fun for you guys. Definitely psychologically torturous for some of us. And we came out stronger, better. The quality of people who are running for these seats and getting these seats just keeps getting better. The commitment of these young people coming in. You know, I joke that now sometimes they reference me as a centrist Democrat, whatever that means, because when I came here in 2002, all the press talked about me as the liberal lunatic from Manhattan who could never accomplish anything, and how the hell did she get here and she won't stay very long. I don't think my policy or ideology positions have changed 1 inch in those 25 years, except now some people think of me as a centrist. I think they're not doing their homework on my bills and what I believe in. But I have no fear of expanding the universe of ideas and people who come into government and come into my conference. I mean, let's be honest. The voters of this country, to some degree, have really had it with the mainstream of both parties, Democrat and Republican. More and more people are not registering in parties for a reason. So, yes, politics is changing. Ideology of who America is and what we need to do is changing. I suspect it changes every generation. And I think that's by and large healthy.
Well, we've been speaking with State Senate Finance Committee Chair Liz Krueger. She's a Manhattan Democrat. Senator, thank you so much for making the time, and so glad to see you up and about. Really, really nice to see.
Nice to see you, David. Thanks for all the good questions.
Anyone out there who is watching session at 5 o'clock on a Monday, if you want to sell your e-bike on Facebook Marketplace, just make sure that you duct tape some lights to it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.